Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly Potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com, digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. Each and every week, we talk about sports topics of local interest, get a national topic or two maybe mixed into the mix. Of course, my favorite part of the podcast where you can ask me a question on any topic, go to the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. It does not have to be sports related. In fact, we would prefer it's not sports related. Rick, again, this is one of the nicer days to sit outside and do this podcast. We've had this heat wave come through. Today's perfect. And unfortunately, this would be the perfect day for me to go golf. I took a vacation week and I don't have golf scheduled for today.
And instead, you're doing a podcast with me on your patio.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
lovely.
Great.
Well, let's start with the Reds here, Skinny. They went 2-4 since we last talked. They're now 37-43, a half game ahead of the Cubs in fourth place in the NL Central, and 10.5 games back of the first place Brewers. And we'll start with this. After Thursday night's game tonight, as we're recording this, we'll be at the midway point of the season with 81 games played. I know everyone always talks about the All-Star break being the midway point, but this will be the actual midway point mathematically. The Reds are currently 6 games under 500. Who knows what will happen in that 81st game, but complete the following sentence for me. The Reds' first half of the season was blank.
Unfulfilling. I don't want to go disappointing because the injuries, I think, derailed it, but really unfulfilling. I mean, they weren't fun to watch for the most part. You got the unicorn moments from Ellie. You got some nice pitching performances from Hunter Green when he's not puking on the mound, or Nick Lodolo when he's not on the IL. But it was really unfulfilling because I still want to see what this team is when everybody's healthy, and we're never going to find that out this year. You're never going to have all these guys healthy at the same time. And listen, you know this. I mean, you're not going to have your core guys healthy for 162 games of any season. That just doesn't happen anymore. But this season went off the rails from Jump Street, and it's never gotten back on.
Yeah, and that's the part that is tough for me when we're getting this far into the season. And, you know, I know it's just one start, but it's like Graham Ashcraft returns after 3 weeks at AAA and allows 6 runs and 9 hits. It doesn't look very good on Wednesday afternoon, a 6-1 loss. The CES situation, which we're going to talk about here in a second. TJ Friedel came back. He wasn't enough. Now he's back on the IL. McLean isn't due back until September, if at all. Sounding like Williamson might be done for the year. I mean, you still got Marte, but Skinny, it's getting to the point where it feels like, where is the hope supposed to come from for this year's team? Where is the upside left? And like, aside from just saying everyone's going to magically start playing better baseball, there really isn't a lot. It felt like for the first month or two, we were going, well, just hold serve until this guy gets back, right, or they get the band back together and they're the Reds we expected. But now, I mean, it just looks like that hope is all but gone.
Yeah, you've been able to piecemeal the infield together for sure. I mean, Candelario started to hit, but now he's dealing with some knee issues, and who knows how bad that's going to. Listen, I will say this much. I don't blame injuries on training staffs. I know other people try to do that. I don't know what they have to do with it other than the ones trying to help them usually recover from some of that stuff. But that said, I don't believe another word David Bell says about injuries. I mean, Nick Lodolo had the blister, and it was he'll be okay to make his next start. And then a day later, he's on the IL. Matt McLean sounds good. He'll be back pretty soon. This was back in spring training. Oh no, he's got an oblique, and now still haven't seen him. CES, I still don't know what went on with that situation. I don't think we're ever going to know with that. I mean, it's just been. I just don't believe them on injuries any longer, and nor should anybody.
No, it's been silly season when it comes to actually discussing the injuries publicly. Let's talk about CES since we're on that topic right now. He is expected to miss the rest of the regular season now after having surgery on his wrist. Mark Sheldon reported that CES will have the surgery on July 11th and that the recovery time is expected to be 3 months. So, Skinny, what do you have on CES getting hit by a pitch on April 27th and now finally having surgery on July 11th that's going to end his season?
I mean, he was obviously dealing with a prior injury, and I don't know if this exacerbated it or the injury was worse, and this just made it more noticeable when he got hit by the pitch. That's the other part to this is, as much as I don't believe what comes out of David Bell's mouth when it comes to injuries, some of these players need to start being honest as well. I mean, TJ Friedel's tried to play through hamstring pain, and now he's back on the IL when it finally was proven he couldn't do it. Matt McLean said he could play, and they took him at his word last year, and he tried to play through 4 or 5 more games and probably further hurt himself. Christian Encarnacion-Strand didn't know anything about a wrist injury until he got hit by that pitch, and I've been playing with a wrist injury. Well, I mean, at what point is it on the players to be a little bit more honest with management as well?
I think there's some of that, and I'm with you of CES getting hit on the wrist by a ball has nothing to do with the the training staff getting him ready or
Right.
them not doing their job, right? That's just is what it is. It's kind of a freak event that happened. But you do have to wonder about some of the timelines on these things and the communication between players. And we had that weird moment where they cleared CES to come back. And then he said, no, I'm going to get a second opinion and look into it farther. And then there's just this long delay here all of a sudden. It's like, and maybe that's just CES saying, hey, I don't want to play this year. I'm sitting out the rest of the year. It doesn't feel right. I'm going to wait until I get this surgery done. And the Reds are trying to talk him into not doing that. I don't know. But either way, it's been a very strange situation. And when you couple that with some of the other things we had that you mentioned, like McLean being brought back last year, or them saying he's going to be fine in spring training only to find out he's going to miss basically the entire season, just something feels off with that whole situation. And again, this goes back to sort of the conversation we had last week about the manager. And it's like everyone always wants to fire the manager every time anything goes wrong. But, it's not like there's any really good points of David Bell's career to point to, any high marks to point to and say, well, he did this and that's why he's proven himself. There are a lot of weird things going on now at this point where it kind of just feels like this team is losing its way and this franchise is not in a very good spot. Again, I don't know that any of that's on him or if it should be put on him or how much of it should be. But at some point, it just becomes like you're the guy in charge and this is a disaster right now.
Yeah, I mean, and the handful of games of late have not helped his cause at all. I mean, the base running stuff is just a joke. I don't mind aggressive. There's aggressive and they're stupid, and they were stupid in that Saturday game. I mean, just utterly stupid. TJ Friedel breaks for home on a contact play. Why'd you have the contact play on with the infield semi in? You would have had second and third with Ellie being the guy at second. Instead, you're first and second. And what happens on the next go round? Ellie gets picked off second. And then the Fraley decision. I mean, what are we just learning how to run the bases? What are we doing here? And again, that is their MO. I'm fine with that, but there's also times to not be aggressive, which is when it's stupid time to be aggressive.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of the people who want to sort of back David Bell or back the team, the always positive guys that don't want you to say anything negative, will point out to stats that say, well, the Reds are still the best, most aggressive base running team in the major. That's great. That's wonderful. I'm happy that they're doing it. They should continue doing that. That doesn't mean they have to make stupid outs consistently, because they're also doing that. Those two things are not like separate. They're both happening. They're doing a lot of great things on the bases. They're being aggressive. There are also some moments that are happening all too regularly where they're just making boneheaded plays. It's not aggressiveness. It's just they're not locked in. They're not thinking. Like a comebacker to the pitcher, you're not running home on that with the infield in.
Yeah, no. And Stuart Fairchild, I don't know if he thought there was only one out on the one where he's rounding third and trying to score up in Milwaukee and gets gunned out at the plate. One thing Stuart Fairchild has going for him, and he doesn't have a whole lot, is he can run. And instead he's looking over his shoulder at the play, and it costs him some steps. Then he makes the terrible throw home on. I mean, that game on Saturday was just if you ever had a spot where you just go, okay, that's enough. I need a new voice in here. That was the game to me. Like, okay, it's run its course. Again, if I wake up tomorrow and David Bell's the manager, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If I wake up tomorrow and David Bell's not the manager, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. It doesn't move the needle much for me. But at some point, you have to do something. And if front office isn't going to go make a move or two, then you have to have a new voice at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe both. Like, I wouldn't be against that. You definitely need more talent right now based on the lineups they're running.
I mean, definitely
yesterday, the bottom five guys in that lineup work horrendous. I mean, if you're an opposing pitcher, you're like, all right, good. I've got an easy day. I've just got to get through the first four guys a few times, and I'm going to have myself a game. And that's exactly the way it's played out.
And that's the thing. Here's the thing, Rick. And moving forward with this, I've got two outfielders I can believe in at the moment. Moving forward, Spencer Steer, and I don't really consider him an outfielder, but when everybody's healthy, he would be the everyday left fielder. I think we'd agree with that. And Friedel, but right now I can't trust Friedel because starting with late last year, it's the injury bug is starting to bite him a little bit. Who else can you trust in the outfield? So you can't. So you know what you have to do? You don't have anybody in the system at the moment. You have to go make a move for a power hitting outfielder, and it may cost you one of your big chits in the minor leagues. And at this point of the game, I'm fine with that. I'm perfect with that.
But to that point, last year, that's what everyone wanted them to do, right?
But here's the thing. Last year, though, Will Benson was hitting. It turns out to be full. Jake Fraley was hitting. Those guys were hitting. So at that point, it was almost like, all right, well, if these guys are going to pan out, and right now you can see that Jake Fraley was never a great player. The power numbers are silly. I don't get it other than the illness. And Will Benson, looks like he was more or less a 2.5-month flash in the pan, but you didn't really know that.
Exactly. But that was our point last year when we said, look, we're okay with the Reds not making a move right now because you don't know that Will Benson and Jake Fraley are cornerstones of the future for this team. And guess what? They weren't at all. If you had dealt one of your a Noel V. Marte or a CES or someone like that. Now, I'm not saying they were looking at dealing CES, but if they were looking at dealing one of these other prospects because you felt like Will Benson was going to be a key cog in your lineup going forward, how stupid would you feel right now about that decision? That's why I'm glad they didn't do it last year when you didn't really know what you had in some of these guys. Now you realize, like, those guys aren't enough. You don't want to deal the Martes, the McLeans, the CESs of the world because you really don't have that much around them in terms of prospects. You need to add something to those key guys. And if that's some younger guys that are, like Reese Hines or whoever that's still in the system that maybe has some value to someone else, great. I'm fine with that. But none of the current guys that we've seen up at the major league level in terms of prospects really should have been dealt at any point and still probably shouldn't.
And the other part to that, though, is if you're not going to make a deal, and again, a lot of this is very fluid because I don't think there's going to be a ton of sellers. There's going to be a lot of people looking to buy here. And maybe you can't pull it off. And I'd like some transparency with that of, listen, we threw a bunch of things against the wall, just couldn't get anything to stick, couldn't find a trading partner, couldn't find it for the right piece. Then you know what you're going to have to do this offseason? And you've had back-to-back great years of attendance. You need to go buy somebody for a change. And you bought Jamer, and honestly, didn't work out early, but he certainly started to play the back of his baseball card. You need a veteran power-hitting right-handed outfield bat, and it's got to be somebody that you go pay for because you don't have it in the system at the moment.
Well, it's kind of going back a little bit. We were talking about some of the weird medical things and just the general chaos that's been happening around this team. What did you think about Hunter Green after he was evaluated by the Reds trading staff? He threw up on the mound following a six-pitch walk, issued a leadoff batter, Andrew McCutchen, in the first inning of Tuesday night's game against the Pirates. And that's after he had thrown up the game before that while he was on the mound.
Is he overhydrating? I mean, we hear about, make sure you hydrate. And even when you feel like you're full and you've had too much, because he said, the only way I can get this fluid out of my body is the vomit. Well, I mean, maybe he's overhydrating, and maybe that's either on him or the training staff or whatever regimen he's got, if that's what it's coming to.
Well, that's what he said after the first one, right? It was a hydration issue. And then the second one, he said that wasn't the problem. He was like sick, and now he's taking pills for his stomach or something. But Skinny, something's going on with this team. I mean, this is bizarre. You're watching the guy who's really been one of the bright, shining moments of this season at this point, Hunter Green, on the mound. He walks a guy, the leadoff batter of the game, and then he's just spewing right there on the mound as he's releasing the pitch and then spewing. It was quite the scene. And then they leave him in the game for another few innings and let him get rocked. It was very strange.
Yeah, that's the other part to it. Okay, so if he's sick or he's not feeling well, and you just saw proof positive of it, we've all been there, right? Where you puke and you're like, I can rally. I'm going to be okay. This is, and you're really not. I mean, you're okay for a very short period of time, and whatever the bug it is, or whatever it is, comes back and gets you. And he's trying to pitch through all of that. I mean, what are we doing?
Did you ever play with one of those guys back in high school where they were just the vomit guy? They were just always throwing up.
No. It's funny you say that. I can remember two instances for me. I remember once in 5th grade, I was playing basketball. I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, playing in our grade school league. And for some reason, my mother insisted that I eat dinner right before the game. And it was a tuna sandwich.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no, it didn't. It came up on the court.
She wanted to get your protein up.
I guess so.
And the other one, no one wanted to guard you man to man closely, though.
They sure didn't. It was probably another high scoring 16-14 game, as you can only imagine. The other one was, and back in my day of high school, we chewed tobacco. I didn't chew it as much as other guys, and I used to wrap mine in chewing gum, like bubble gum. I read a couple big league players did that. I'm like, okay, because the first time I tried chewing tobacco and put a big wad up there, I'm like, oh, this is gross. So I did it with some gum. I'm like, all right, this isn't so bad. Stole second base and swallowed the chew. And
oh, no.
You can just imagine where all that went at some point. Yeah.
You couldn't smell it for the next 2 years of your life, could you?
Could not.
Yeah.
Don't think I've taken a little snuff since then in my lifetime, but I've never gone back to full-fledged chewing tobacco.
That'll ruin you.
Oh,
I mean, legitimately. Yeah. I puking for me is not, but I remember there were guys who could puke and it was no big deal. It's just like water. They would just be throwing up, running, throwing up, and they just keep doing it during practice or whatever. But I was always like, man, if I threw up, no, I'm not practicing the rest of the day. That's all.
I'm done.
a big
Well,
deal to my life.
We used to have our baseball coach used to do it occasionally. We call it the Saturday morning checkup, where if we played like a Friday game and we didn't play well, we'd have to come in and run, and he just lined the garbage cans up. And it did affect some guys, and he was making sure that we didn't get too inebriated the night before was all that was.
Well, yeah, and then they always used to do this. We're going to run until someone pukes, and then
Yes,
they found
correct.
out like actually that's like abuse, and we probably shouldn't be doing that. That's not healthy.
Back in the late 70s, early 80s, no one cared about that, my friend.
yeah, no doubt. Just wrapping this up, Skinny. Wednesday was the final day of an 80-game suspension for Noelvi Marte. He's going to be rejoining the team, we think, for the St. Louis series here. He's been at Louisville for the past few weeks. He's posted a 151 average with a 321 OPS, no homers, and 15 strikeouts over 53 at-bats. That's over the course of 12 games. What are you expecting from Noelvi Marte here?
I would say not much, and I'm not a big, hey, look at rehab numbers guy because, sometimes you're just trying to get timing down and the average doesn't come, but it seems like he's swinging and missing more than he should be. The thing I don't know, and I haven't read this, Rick, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how much, maybe I'm sure he was taking some BP before he went on the rehab assignment, but it's not the same as facing live pitching. And that's a guy that's not facing real live pitching for 3 months, right? I mean, that's a big deal to me.
Well, and I mean, also there's live pitching and there's major league pitching, which are two very different things too. So even if, you're getting your BP in, that's not the same as going in and facing live breaking balls from the best pitchers in the world. It's going to be a hard adjustment. And then, by the way, if he does really well and the Reds make a miraculous comeback, he's not eligible for the postseason either.
I'd like that to be a problem, to be honest with you. I'm sure Reds fans would like that to be a problem as well. One thing I will say is I would much rather see him get some at-bats, and if it doesn't work out, put him back into Louisville and just say, hey, listen, you need a little bit more time. I'd like to throw him in because there's enough Santiago Espinal for me. I've had plenty enough.
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm good on that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the Reds, Skinny?
The other thing I would say is honestly, and I think this would be a merciful decision, and it worked last year, and who's to say it doesn't work this year? They need to send Will Benson down. I mean, they really do. And when he went down last year, it looked like if you looked at his major league numbers at that point, it looked like this guy's not a major league hitter. He's basically a 4A guy. Well, he came back, and lo and behold, he didn't only hit; he hit with power, hit for average. Did some really good things over the last 3 months. And it looked like that stint in Louisville did him extremely well. Why can't it do him well again? What's to say it can't do him? I mean, here's the thing. If you send him down for a couple of weeks and he gets it right and he comes back and hits the way he did last year, I don't know if he will or not. You've added a nice piece to the roster for the last couple of months. But if you're going to let him continue to flail up here, you're not doing him any good and you're not doing your team any good.
Yeah, that's the thing. What are you losing by doing that?
Right.
It's not like he's helping you. It's funny because I got,
and I know the answer would be there's nobody to come up, right? But you know what? It doesn't matter. I mean,
again, the replacement level is fine in this case.
Right.
He's horrible right now, and you're right. I mean, he's scuffling so bad that you just got to give him a reset. But I remember last year we were doing the podcast early on, and right before he got sent down, I crushed him. Was just looking at him, he does not look like a baseball player. It is that bad.
And he didn't.
He came back and he did great, and I got ripped, and rightfully so. I mean, he was really good when he came back for most of the rest of the year. But I mean, we're right back to what it looked like originally. He has some really bad at bats. Just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing up there.
And now he's pressing. Right now it's cumulative. Now you're, like I said, we've talked about it. Now you're trying to hit a 5-run homer, and that's not plausible, man. Just get a good AB, and when you're pressing, you're not going to get a good AB. So go down and let him get some good ABs. Maybe get himself right. Realize, okay, mechanically, I'm doing this now by default. I wasn't. Again, you can probably look at all the film you want and go, yeah, mechanically I'm not. But if you don't feel at the plate and you're flailing away, who's it benefiting? It's not benefiting anybody.
He feels like your classic 4A player.
He does. He really does.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for him. And right now it's unfortunate for the Reds because they need anyone to step up and get going. I mean, Jonathan India, to his credit, has gotten it going on the offensive side, but between him and Ellie, it just hasn't been enough outside because they're getting almost nothing else. All right, let's switch gears here to the Bengals side of things, which is slow week for the Bengals world. We're not really doing much, waiting for training camp to start, but it was international week, I guess, for Bengals beat writers as they had to go watch the events taking place in Paris to find Joe Burrow, who took part in the Vogue World 2024 fashion show, by walking the runway in a black suit jacket with no undershirt and an exposed back. He said, quote, "I wanted to get out of my comfort zone and grow as a person, and I think walking in the show is a great way to do that. I think the crossover between fashion and sport is going to continue to grow. I've always loved clothes, but never really understood the industry, so I wanted to learn more." Skinny, what did you think of Joe Burrow modeling at a fashion show in Paris?
Buddy, you do you, and you do yourself pretty well, but don't think that there's a lot of us like myself that didn't just go, "You look like a douche." I mean, you absolutely look as douchey as you can possibly look. But again, you do you. That's fine. You do you. But I mean, it feels like he's crawling into weird areas at the moment, does it not? Honestly, I'm not so sure the breakup with the longtime girlfriend has been good for him.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but that's a good point. I don't care what you do. I'm fine with this. If you want to be into weird, silly stuff, that's what young people do. I get that. Not for me. It's fine if you like it. But this is definitely weird, rich, young person stuff where you're trying to be cool and sophisticated and find your voice and be different, but you really just don't have a personality. Like, you've been training doing nothing but football for however many years.
Which is what endeared him to this fan base.
Right. You don't have a personality. You don't have whatever. So you're trying to be cool and sophisticated and do this. But like, do you really think Joe Burrow was comfortable or enjoyed walking down a runway in that weird suit thing? That's so strange to me.
I think he did, to be honest with you. And listen, this fan base loves him, and understandably so, and rightfully so. But I made this comment to somebody else on a phone call that I said, he's now doing stuff like this, which is fine. You do yourself in the off season again, but it opens yourself up to another injury away from, look, all he cares about is this stuff off the field. See, he got his money. He got paid. Here we go.
That was my This will come back up if he starts slow.
Yes.
It's just what we do in this city. We do not,
whether it should or shouldn't, it's coming up.
We do not like our stars to act like stars in Cincinnati. And I mean, in New York, in LA, you're going to get ripped either way in New York, so it doesn't matter. Sure. In LA, they're used to stuff like this. This is what they want you to do. But in Cincinnati and most of these other Midwestern cities, we do not want our stars to do the ritzy, glamorous star stuff. We want you to be the guy who's just in his basement playing his piano, allegedly, and reading his playbook all the time. And that's not fair. It's not feasible. It's not reasonable, but it's the reality of the situation. When he starts off, when the Reds or the Bengals go 1-2 to start the season, like they always seem to at the beginning of the year, even though the schedule sets up for them to not do that, people are going to be talking about fashion shows and Joe Burrow walking them. I can guarantee you that.
For sure. There's no question about it. Again, you do you, and you do it pretty well, but yeah, it feels like he's really trying to find himself, doesn't it? I mean, he seemed like a guy that hey, all football, got my girlfriend, it's a longtime girlfriend, I'm grounded, and now it's like she gone, and I'm going to try to live my best life in a way that I'm not sure I understand how.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got a lot of money, you've got a little bit of free time right now. I get that you're going to live a life different from the way most of us would, but the Paris fashion show stuff, I don't know. It just seems awfully strange.
Yes.
And it doesn't really seem like that's who Joe Burrow is. But again, he's young. He's trying to find his voice. He's trying to find his personality, I think. He also talked about getting comfortable with his popularity and adjusting to that, showing more sides of himself. He said, "That's something that I've struggled with for my entire career, really. I'm a pretty private person. I try to keep as much as I can to myself, but I'm starting to branch out a little bit and get a little more comfortable sharing parts of my personality." Is this like just him talking about the piano stuff and maybe this fashion stuff? Or do you think we're going to get like kooky Joey Votto making Instagram reels version of Joe Burrow this year?
It feels like it's coming, although he doesn't. That would be a step for me that I have to see to believe. He was in a picture with some guy I don't even know. He's an actor, and he's the actor's, I don't know, he's doing some kind of cool thing with a finger, and Joey's flipping off the camera. I'm like, what are we are flipping off the I don't know if you saw it was on Instagram or Twitter. Somebody sent it to me. I'm like, what are we doing?
This podcast should just be me bringing up Instagram pictures of athletes and you explaining what's going on in the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
That was tremendous.
Exactly. Have you seen the picture I'm talking about?
I've seen a lot of them.
Hang on.
I saw that exact one.
I've got it here. I can't show it, but I've got it. He's on a show. I don't even know what the show was because I had to look up who this cat is. Some dude named West Wilson.
No idea.
He's on some show. He's giving you the cool peace sign with his Chiefs cap on, and Joey B's flipping it off. I don't know if he's flipping off because he's a Chiefs fan or whatever, but whatever, man. Do you?
Yeah,
You do you.
exactly. All right. Anything else on the Bengals or Burrow? I know I said it's a light week. I really don't
It
have
is.
anything interesting to
No,
talk
I
about.
mean there's literally nothing else going on Bengals related, in my opinion.
All right. Well, the NBA draft was also round 1 was last night. They're going to continue round 2 on Thursday night as we're recording this, which I don't know why the NBA draft would ever need 2 nights to get through
So
that.
so I didn't realize it was a 2-day occurrence this year. It's always been one day where you like wake up at 1 in the morning and they're still finishing up round 2 and you're like, oh, who's still left? Oh yeah, okay, that guy. So this morning I'm scrolling, I'm like, why do I not see round 2? And then I read a couple. I went, oh, round 2 is until today. Why are we doing that? Because nobody cares about round 2. Nobody.
Yeah, especially in the NBA, it's just senseless.
Yeah.
And it's like it's 2 rounds. Why would that ever need to be 2
Right.
nights? It doesn't make any sense. And
Correct.
there's always guys that like slip from round 1 to 2. I know that happens in the NFL too, but it's like they're there for the weekend. They're planning on that. The NBA, if you show up to the green room, or even if you're not invited to the green room, but you show up to the draft, it's like now you have this whole thing. It seems like it's so easily avoidable if you just keep it on one night. But
I followed it on my phone, so I did not watch any of it last night. Did you watch it? A and B? Are there guys were there guys stuck in the green room that are still there? I mean, I'm assuming Filipowski would be one of them.
It wasn't that big of a storyline when they went off air because they went off abruptly. So I'm actually not even sure who would have been waiting still if there were any players. But I would have to imagine there's got to be someone that didn't go because there were several names that they weren't sure about, towards the bottom of the draft. Now, I don't know if all those guys showed up. Speaking of that, would you rather be, if you were a first round guy, and let's say you're not a bona fide top 10 pick, would you rather be at the green room or there for the draft, getting your picture taken with Adam Silver? Or would you rather be at a sick house party with your family and friends?
House party with family and friends for the potential of embarrassment. I mean, whether it is embarrassing or not, it is.
What if you know you're going to go?
No, if you know you're going lottery for sure, I'm there. I'd be in the green. Yeah, I'd be in the green room for sure.
I think I would too, because at the end of the day, you'd want that picture long term.
Yeah,
like you'd want to show your kid. You'd want to, be able to say, I actually did reach the NBA, even my career didn't go anywhere. But I have to say, watching Zach Edey hanging out on that, he was on like somebody's patio as he was getting drafted. He's with all his teammates, and it looked like there was like a great party there afterwards. That looked a lot more fun than just being in the middle of downtown New York with nobody.
I do wonder what feedback he got, because we all, we talked after the college season a little bit on this podcast. I'm sure you've talked with buddies who thought that, he's at best a, late 20s pick. He was always going to probably be a first round guy, but probably late. And the question was always, how do you fit his skill set into today's modern NBA, all of those things. For him to go as high as he did, I wonder if he even got any of that feedback that he had a potential to go that high.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did see, he's selected 9th in the draft, and immediately there were articles that said like Zach Edey at 9th is one of the worst draft picks ever and stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of scrutiny around it. Talk about some of the local guys. Kentucky's Reed Sheppard went number 3 overall to the Rockets.
He didn't. No, he didn't. He went number 1. He's the number 1 American drafted.
That's right. Is that a Cal spin? Did Arkansas tweet that out as our coach had a two top 10 picks?
Yeah, he had a number 1 American taken.
Arkansas tweeted out every year that Cal has had a guy drafted for however many years in a row. So like tweet out 17 years in a row of like our head coach has had a guy drafted, and it's like, well, none of them were with you. They were all with you. Yeah. That makes no sense.
I guess it was to prove to recruits, like recruits don't already know some of that stuff.
Right. Like I get it, but it's just one of those things that they do as athletic departments. That's so funny from a media perspective. But so he goes number 3 to the Rockets. And I'm kind of glad he didn't end up going to my Spurs, so I can say this now. But this draft was so bad at the top that I spent most of the end of the college basketball season saying, I can't believe Reed Sheppard is being talked about as a potential lottery pick. And then by the time the draft actually came around, I saw who else was at the top of it. I was like, I hope the Spurs, who I cheer for, take Reed Sheppard with the 4th overall pick, because he was the best option, I think. He ends up going number 3, 1 pick before they're able to get him. The Spurs ended up with Stephon Castle from UConn. So it's like, I don't know how my night could have been any more disastrous. I think the Spurs have given up on scoring altogether, aside from Victor Wembanyama. They're just like, screw it. We'll do that. And then they had another pick in the top 10 at number 8, and they actually selected the other Kentucky guard, Rob Dillingham.
But wait, there's more.
Only to trade his rights away to the Timberwolves right after, which I was excited about Dillingham, because I'm like, okay, great. They got a scorer, a guy with a lot of upside, and then they traded him away right away. So they end up with essentially nothing that's going to help them immediately. I mean, Stephon Castle could be a good defender. The only other local guy that went was Dayton big man Deron Holmes. He was taken with the 22nd pick by the Suns. who then traded him to the Denver Nuggets. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the local guys that went, but that was really the only storylines.
Yeah, I mean, Deron Holmes is a good player. That's probably a nice little fit for him because he doesn't have to go in and do much other than be a role guy, right? On that Nuggets team. I think sometimes it's a perfect pick. I'm really interested to see what Reed Sheppard brings to the NBA. I'll admit I was wrong about Tyler Hero. I never thought he'd pan out as a good NBA player, and he's really good. I mean, he's a good, solid NBA player, right? Not starish, but certainly upper echelon of goods because he does everything really, really well. Nothing singularly great. That kind of feels like what Reed's going to be, right?
Yeah,
and for a number 3 overall pick, that's a big ask.
I have concerns about his defense for sure. I mean, I know everyone's talking about because he got the steals and he gets the block shots and all that, but it just seems like man-to-man guarding elite athletes on the wing is going to be difficult for him. Now, he shoots the heck out of it and his feel is off the charts. He can actually make some plays for you as an off-ball creator. I think there's a definite role for him in today's NBA with all the space there is and the value placed on skill. And quite honestly, again, this draft was so bad at the top when you really look. Now, we never know how good a draft actually is until 5 years down the line when you see how this all pans out.
Sure.
But based on the talent available, I mean, it just didn't feel like there were actual game changers and guys that were going to be instant impact guys in the top 5. So, I mean, yeah, you're taking Reed Sheppard and you may say, well, he may just be a role guy and kind of a shooter, but if you get that out of this draft, I think you're feeling like you did pretty well.
No, I think Reed Sheppard is going to be a long-time successful NBA player, but number 3 overall suggests that's going to be an all-star level player, and I don't know if that was ever going to be him. Maybe it is. To all your points, I love everything about his game other than him being able to guard straight line drives. I mean, he's a great anticipator in passing lanes. He's got length, the athleticism to block shots. He had the highest vertical leap at the NBA draft. I mean, the shooting's not going to change. He's going to make shots. I mean, he's just too good of a shooter for that. And who knows, maybe with more space in some NBA games, he becomes literally an elite shooter. But yeah, he feels like he's a Tyler Hero, which again, Tyler Hero is having a very nice NBA career. Will continue to have that. And I think Reed Sheppard will too. I just don't know if he'll ever be that star material player. Maybe nobody in this draft is that guy.
I can see him being better or more valuable than Tyler Hero because I think he's more of a playmaker and ball handler.
Probably right. Yeah, I guess. Tyler doesn't play point guard, but yeah.
Yeah, I think he can make other guys around him better than Tyler. Tyler's pretty tunnel visioned, like just a scorer. And I think Reed fits in a little bit better with the team concept.
I think, and you can disagree certainly because it's just my opinion on this. I think Dillingham's upside is more. I just think his upside is more.
Now he also has the potential to just completely flame out, I think, and never get going.
Yes, that is correct. But I think he will get so many layups in transition and just pushing the ball with his speed that's going to be easy for him to score. And he shoots it enough with the upside to shoot it really well. So I think to be a really good player.
Yeah, I think if the work ethic's there and the shot improves incrementally, that's all he really needs. It's just a little bit higher efficiency rate from 3-point arc because all the rest is there in terms of the handle, the quickness, the ability to get separation and score one-on-one, score off ball screens. I love Rob Dillingham. Like I said, I was excited when the Spurs were taking him at 8th, and then, of course, they traded him right away. So that
why did they do that, by the way? Because I thought that was a nice piece for them.
I did too. Apparently, they didn't feel like I assume they're going to make some type of big splash in free agency.
That's what I would think.
Because
yeah.
What else are you going to do? You got Victor Wembanyama. You're just going to waste these years away here? I don't understand. You could be competing as soon as next season if you had one big-time scorer on the wing to go with him. They have none of that. I mean, I think Stephon Castle might be their starting point guard now going into next year, which is scary to think about. He didn't even play point guard at UConn. So, which is another funny conversation. It's like the NBA does – when we talk about positionless basketball, the NBA really has gone to that. Like Stephon Castle, the Spurs just drafted him as a point guard likely, and potentially their starting point guard immediately. He didn't play point guard in high school, and he didn't play point guard at UConn at all. And now he's probably going to be a starting point guard in the NBA. Meanwhile, you've got Desmond Claude leaving Xavier, going out to USC because he wanted to play point guard. Like that really matters in the way NBA teams view you. It's kind of funny how that all works in the way parents and players think versus what is actually happening in reality.
All right, speaking of USC, and then I got one more Kentucky one for you. And we're doing this, and people will probably be listening to this after the second round takes place. Does Bronny James get taken?
I mean, it seems like there's too much smoke for him not to get taken at all. It feels like there was maybe some type of guarantee, or maybe the Lakers just told him, hey, when he doesn't get drafted, we'll sign him as an unrestricted free agent and he can come to camp with us or whatever. I don't know. It seems like he's going to be on someone's roster after this is all over, because why else would they have sent him into the NBA if not? But I don't think there's much of a future there for him right now. 2 years ago, I thought people were being way over the top on how critical they were of his game. And I was like, look, the DNA is obviously there. His dad developed the way he did and became the physical specimen that he did. The chances that he could develop late is very high still. And he could be a late bloomer here and get a lot bigger and more athletic physically. Now, 2 years later, the fact that he's going through this process so quickly and now jumping to the NBA after really not even making any waves in college whatsoever, it just seems like he's destined to kind of fail based on the route they're taking.
Yeah, and then obviously Justin Edwards for Kentucky, who, if you had done this a year ago, was probably listed as a top 10 NBA prospect, and he has slid. I would assume he gets taken probably before pick 45, somewhere in that range. I would think. And sometimes that can be a good situation. It used to be kind of a death knell to be a second round pick because of the lack of guaranteed money. It was always, first round's guaranteed, lottery's lottery, and that money's, life-changing guaranteed. Second round was kind of okay, well, if we like you, we'll keep you around, get you on a 2-way contract. And some of that happens with these guys, but it feels like the league is found some more success plucking second round picks.
There has been, and there's also been some guys that maybe if they slip a little bit, but the team really likes them, feels like they have that upside, they'll take them with the idea of like, man, we'll sign you to a guaranteed deal. It won't be as big as you may have liked, but we'll sign you to a guaranteed deal for a couple of years and really give you a chance to make this thing work because we actually believe in your upside. We do think you're a first round type talent. You're seeing a little bit more of that, I think, but for the most part, I mean, like Mikal Bridges is a good example. The Knicks just got Mikal Bridges, traded away a bunch of picks to do so in the
5 of them.
I think that's a good deal. Like, I just don't think picks are all that valuable anymore, the way teams use them. So I'm not sure that it really matters where talent comes from. They're just looking for that. And as a second rounder, you don't often get the same opportunity as you would as a first rounder. But if you're talented enough, you can still make it in the league. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, and you look at some of those lottery guys, you get a couple of, some foreign guys that you think you know something about. You certainly probably like their skill set, but you really don't know what they're all about. As players from a competition standpoint, you got the G League Ignite guys that are coming into the league who have played at a better level probably than high school, but probably not as good as top-notch college level. But obviously there's something to those guys. So there's a lot of the unknowns that you're taking more upside than you're taking anything other than that. I mean, yes, some production from high school for sure, maybe some production from a year wherever you are, but it's more looking at upside than anything else. And it's really a roll of the dice. And to your point, that's where I'm not sure the draft picks are. It's like the whole offensive line conversation in football. Give me proven NFL tape over what I think I might get from a college guy, no matter how good that college guy looks on tape.
Yeah, and I think you can always trade back into drafts. If you blow up your plan, you're like, actually, we're rebuilding, we want draft picks again, someone will be giving them up, and you'll be able to trade back in if you really want to. Skinny, I know you said you didn't watch any of last night's coverage, so I want you to do this. If you have any time tonight when the draft is on, go on to ABC, watch some of their draft coverage, okay? Honest to God, it was some of the worst television I've ever watched in my life. Forget the fact that ESPN can't get any of the graphics right. I mean, they had probably 10 graphics last night that were just completely wrong. Like Reed Shepard, they called him John Shepard on the graphic.
Where did that come from?
I don't. I mean, you'd think you could get him right. Like he had, the parents were kind of the story this year with Reed.
Dude, you would think you'd have probably 100 names already typed into the system, and somebody's already double checked them and triple checked them to make sure they're correct.
And they probably did, and they were like, John is spelled correctly here, John. That's right, got it. I mean, it was so. Wow. I mean, all types of graphics wrong throughout the night. That was just the most glaring because you're like, as someone in this area, you're like, what the hell? How do you not get that right? But then you've got Bob Meyer, the old Warriors GM, I believe, and Stephen A. Smith, along with whoever the male host was of the event. I don't even remember of that. But it's just like most of the analysis, Skinny, was they'd come back and they'd go, yeah, looking at the Nuggets roster, they really needed something.
Sure did.
Really?
And they got that guy.
They did. They did get something. They got something with the. It was the most generic, bad analysis, and I mean, they just completely mailed it in. And Monica McNutt's interviews are some of the worst television you will ever watch.
Brutal, no question about that part of it. That I've seen that before too. That's brutal. Yeah, I'll have to watch it early because I'm probably going to watch the debate like most people are. It'll be bad theater no matter which one you're watching, either the draft or that, or or flipping to the Reds game at some point will probably be bad theater as well.
Well, there the worst execution in the Reds game, worst broadcast quality in the draft, and then just Lord help you if you're watching the debate.
Lord help you with the other thing. Yeah. By the way, I've got a quick Jeff Shepard story. I thought it was pretty funny. My former radio partner, John Shepard. My former radio partner Tom Gamble, one of his clients for his marketing company is St. E, and they did some kind of event at the Reds game this past Saturday, and Jeff Shepard came up to speak at this. And Tom knew who he was, but he walked up and he said, "Hey, I'm Jeff Shepard. I'm Reed's dad." And I'm like, dude, you are a most outstanding player in NCAA tournament, for goodness sakes. You can stand on your own merit, dude. I get it. And he just laughed. I'm like, that's actually a pretty good introduction.
Yeah, that's actually kind of awesome. Is going by, I'm Reed's dad now.
I'm Reed's dad. Yeah.
Yeah. He does look, I'll tell you what, he does look like the dad of the family too.
Oh yeah.
He hasn't kept himself in shape. He's just an old dad there. He's not trying to glitz and glamour it up at the draft and like be front and center. You know, it's not like Dan Hurley with his guys, Castle and Clay. He's up there doing the interviews with them like he is their father. So
very
shout out to Jeff Shepard.
Very Cal-esque right there, by the way.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything. We'll start with rank your top 3 vacation spots you've been to.
For sure, Maui is number 1 with a bullet. I would just go Hawaii in general. I didn't like Kauai as much, but I'll go Maui and just a little bit of Honolulu. Not a lot. A lot of Honolulu is too much. Like 3 days is plenty. Maui's where you need to hang out for sure.
That's what I always say. 3 days of Honolulu is too much for me.
It really actually is. As a kid, believe it or not, and this would now you'd probably go there and be killed within 5 seconds. Acapulco, Mexico, when I was a kid. It was beautiful. The place we stayed was great. My mom and dad worked for the airline, so we traveled a lot when I was a kid because we could travel for cheap. Saw cliff divers do it live, which at the age I saw it was the coolest thing I think I've ever seen. But again, it was just beautiful. But I think honestly, you go today and you'd be dead within 5 minutes. So I don't want to go there. And believe it or not, I know it's hot, but I always love it, and it's always had a place for me. And we used to go a bunch. I love Phoenix, Arizona. I love that area. And I don't mind the heat, so there's that.
I mean, that's a pretty good lineup. You got it scattered a little bit all over there.
Yeah, I've been to San Francisco a bunch, and a night in San Francisco is about enough. You go to a good restaurant, you walk down by the pier and the wharf, and then you're like, okay, I'm good. I don't want to go up where the people are defecating in the streets. I'm fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in San Francisco. I will say that.
Yes,
I saw a guy in an Allen Iverson jersey, a Georgetown throwback Allen Iverson jersey, with his pants down and just running all down the back of him, legs and everything. As I was in when NKU played up there this year.
And I'll go with one more. I've come to really enjoy going to visit my daughter in Orlando, especially the way we did it this past year, where literally we'd go to the park for a while. They'd stick around and watch the fireworks and shows, and I'd just hop on the Skyliner and head back to the hotel and start drinking. That was perfect for me. It was
what time you head back? What time in the evening you head back to the room?
About 7-ish.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not too bad. We'd go to the park about 11, see her do some performances. Then she'd get off. We'd go ride some rides. I enjoy riding rides. I just don't enjoy standing in line, and I don't enjoy watching any of the shows. I did watch a show she was in, so there was that, which is the fatherly thing to do, but I don't care about the show.
I mean, 8 hours at the park, you put your time in, I feel like.
I feel so too, and that's why I don't want to stick around for the fireworks. I just don't.
I thought you were going to say, like, you showed up at noon and left at 3 p.m. and started drinking, but you did a good job.
No, yeah, I thought I did pretty well.
All right. Texas Roadhouse, the rolls will reportedly be sold in Walmart's freezer aisle throughout Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. It includes 12 mini rolls and honey butter. Will you be purchasing Texas Roadhouse rolls for the house, Skinny?
Probably, but none of us like the honey butter. I don't like the honey or the cinnamon butters that are served. Just give me butter for me. A couple of go-tos. Oh, Charlie's rolls, I thought in the day were pretty good. We don't go there a whole lot anymore. In fact,
with the loaded potato soup.
Well, I used to get the black and blue salad, the steak salad. That was always really good in those rolls. And then I haven't been to Red Lobster in eons, but the biscuits from Red Lobster are still some of the best going.
Yeah, well, cheddar bay
Cheddar bay,
biscuits?
yeah, cheddar biscuit, yeah.
Those are pretty good, although I haven't had that since I was like, I don't think I've had Red Lobster since I was a little kid. Like
Yeah,
literally.
it's been quite a while. One of the first adult meals that me, and we weren't married at that point, my wife and my best friend, like we, got our first jobs and kind of had our first places we were living on our own. We went to Red Lobster. We thought we were pretty cool. We got a chance to go to a big time meal and pay for it ourselves.
You were
and that's when you
balling.
Realized, boy, I tell you what, adulthood sucks.
Yeah, you got that tab and had to tip on it, and you were like, actually, let's get back to McDonald's.
Correct.
Yeah. The Texas Red House rolls are good, but I also think they're kind of one of those things where it's like in the moment. It's like when it's hot and it's fresh and you're sitting down to eat dinner, it's really good because you're hungry. I don't know this is something I need at my house. And if I'm going for the GOAT of appetizers, like free appetizers when you walk in, it's Chewy's chips and creamy jalapeno dip for me.
They are pretty doggone good.
Off the charts.
Yeah, they're pretty doggone good.
All right. And are you ready for the length of the NBA and NFL seasons question?
I was getting ready to call that up because I thought you'd forgotten it again. So
okay. So here's the original question from 3 weeks ago that we never got to. A lot of talk about the length of the NBA and NFL seasons, and people perpetually complain about baseball. Let's say you can impose a regular season length and particulars, frequency of games, when the season starts and ends, playoff format on the big three U.S. sports. You have to exist within the current format of number of teams, divisions, conferences, but no issue with tradition, etc. And owners and players have to do whatever you say. Lay out your plan for the big three pro sports, Skinny.
Yeah, so I'll start with the easiest one that doesn't need a ton of fixing, in my opinion. That's the NFL. I thought 16 was a good number. I did. I thought that felt like a perfect number. And honestly, I'm not so sure I wouldn't go back to 16 with a second bye week and frankly, no Thursday games. Or if we're going to do Thursday games, if I can't get that, however that bargaining system would work, you would follow up a Thursday game with, or you'd have a bye week before you would play that Thursday game. So that way, I think you could do it with everybody having 2 bye weeks of finding a way to make that work for everybody. 18-2, I listen, I hate the preseason as much as anybody does. It's a waste of everybody's time other than those guys trying to make the back end of the roster. But for the most part, it's just literally a futile process to care anything about whatsoever, unless you're wondering about the 7th wide receiver in camp. So I get the concept, but listen, 18 games, these guys were already beat up in a 14 game season, beat up even more in a 16 game season with Thursday games thrown in over the years. Now the 17th game you're seeing, I mean, Rick, I don't have the number in front of me. I could have looked it up, I guess. I mean, the number of guys that started at quarterback last year in the NFL was a ridiculous number because dudes are getting beat up. It takes a physical toll. It takes a mental toll. So to me, the NFL, the easy fix to me is go back to 16 games with 2 bye weeks. And either do away with Thursday games or you have a bye going into Thursday. Let's go each individually. What do you think of that?
I think that makes sense to me. When I see this question, I'm immediately just like, my eyes start glazing over and I'm like, it feels like they have a better system than what I'm going to come up with. The one that I think has to be changed is baseball. Baseball is way too long to me. The other two, I mean, I think you could easly clip basketball down from an entertainment value perspective, but let's go there. They're never going to do it for money.
Yeah, let's go there. Let's go to, if it was a perfect world, I would go to 70 games. You could have a player, because right now 65 is the criteria to win awards, right? And obviously there's a lot of guys that either go under that criteria or barely get to that. So it means a lot of times for load management, you don't know when guys are playing and when they're not. So going from 70 games, and what you would give is you'd give players, they get 5 outs before, let's just say, let's use Joel Embiid, for example. You've used your 5 outs to get down to 65. Anything above that, like you want to sit him out for a game, he has to sit for 2 weeks. To me, that would hopefully do some way with this load management stuff. And I get it.
Hold on. Run that by me again. So he gets 5 games where he sits out free of charge, basically. Free of charge. And that's regardless of whether he's hurt or not?
Yes, correct. And that's what's going on now. I mean, we're sitting out 15 games for some of these guys, 17 games for some of these guys.
So let's say he's hurt, he's out for 2 weeks, whatever. So he's used up that and then some. But then anytime after that you want to sit him out, he's got to be out for at least 2 weeks.
That's correct. That's
interesting.
Correct.
So very punitive on the trying to rest a guy.
Yes, correct. Because I'm giving them more rest with fewer games. I think starting before Halloween-ish is too much for me. Let's start sometime in mid-November. And I guess if you want to, so let's go November 1st, and you play. I'd have to do the weeks. I did this before. Give me 1 second. You would play a maximum of 3 games a week. Right now, they're trying to play 3, and then there's sometimes 4, and you would never play back-to-backers. You'd play 3 maximum in a week, no back-to-backers.
I think that makes all the sense in the world. I could even be talked into a 2-game per week schedule for the NBA, something more like college, just to have a few more weeks in this.
Yeah, I still think to get it done, if you started November 1st, that would get you done right at the end of March, and your playoffs would start like the Wednesday after the national championship game.
Yeah, and that's if you're sticking to 70-ish games. I mean,
yes, correct.
I'd be fine with them cutting it down to 50 or something.
Correct. And baseball, I'd cut it to 144. I would cut the weeks down from, I would start probably the second week of April and end it probably mid-September, so you can at least get some decent weather playoff games as opposed to playing in 30 degrees in snow. And actually, that's kind of what we're doing at the start of seasons as well, if you start on the East Coast. And I would mix in, I did the weeks on this, and I think I came up with, there would also be 4 Sunday doubleheaders. That I always loved the tradition of that. And, in today's rosters, you got 26 dudes, man. I mean, you can make it work in a doubleheader. They used to do it back in the day constantly, and I know the old back in the day. But you cut it down to 144. I'm cutting out of the season about roughly 3 weeks, and that would kind of be 1 week on the front end, and then 3 weeks on the back end, where you're entering the middle of September and get maybe some good weather playoff games. And it's early enough in the NFL process. It's early enough in the college process. I still don't know if competing with them head to head in the playoffs is ever going to make it successful for people to watch. I mean, if you gave me my choice, I think you'd be the same way, Rick. If it's a really good college football Saturday and a playoff game that doesn't involve my team, and look, baseball, the one thing about it, I think we all can agree on, it's very regional. We don't national FS1 game, unless I've got a wager on it, I'm not watching it on a Saturday night. I just don't care enough on a Saturday night. Baseball playoffs roll around. Will I flip to watch maybe if it's a tense moment? Sure. But if it's not my team, I just don't care enough about it. But I'd at least like to give it some good weather games.
At this point, do you watch any regular season baseball games that aren't the Reds?
Very rarely. I mean, like if I'm flipping through on occasion, it's an 8th inning of a 2-2 game, I might watch it. But I really don't.
I never do. Like I can't remember the last time I turned on a regular season baseball game between 2 teams that didn't involve the Reds.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. I mean, I watched a little bit of a game on the Brewers played on Saturday night. I was just flipping around, left it on for about an inning and a half, and then it bored me, and I flipped on something else. And I grew up in the generation that would have loved that. Yeah. I grew up in the generation where you were lucky to have the Saturday game of the week on NBC. Then there was ABC's Monday Night Baseball, and your local team would do basically most of the away games on a local affiliate, and then maybe 3 to 5 home games, including opening day. And that was what you got to watch.
But that's what it is now. We just have too many options for entertainment, right? Yes, I mean, that's why that's not appealing to people anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think to me it would be shortening every one of these. And the NFL would be the least one to tweak, in my opinion. Again, just scale it back to the 16 with 2 buys. I think it's not perfect, but I think it works. I mean, listen, I know fans are going to love the 18 regular season games because it's another week to bet on games and have fantasy football, and I'm involved in all that too. Just, I know these players, man, and I see them, and by the end of the year, they are beat to hell and back, dude. And you're asking another one of those weeks. I know, yeah. Hey, listen, to Ted Karras and Mike Hilton's point when I talked to them about this, and they were pretty honest. Joe Burrow was pretty honest about this. Hey, you want to give us an extra game check? Great, we'll do it. But you could tell there wasn't much excitement other than playing for the money of it. And to me, listen, you're playing for the money of it, but for a lot of these guys, they are playing to win, and they want to win. That's what's important to them. But man, it takes a physical toll. And then if you're a playoff team, a consistent, I'm surprised this hasn't taken a little more of a toll on the Chiefs going this deep into postseasons. I mean, I truly think the 2 back-to-back postseasons, obviously Burrow aside, I think it was a physical toll on those guys. I really do. That suddenly it feels like you're looking up, and here we are in April, and we're starting all over again. It feels like the season just ended 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, I think there's the physical toll and the combination of that, and it's hard to keep a good team together because of contract
Yes.
restrictions
Yeah.
year after year for multiple years. That the combination of those two things is why it's so difficult to repeat in the NFL and stay at the top. So no, I think that's a really good point. But I'm with you on this. I think the NFL, to me, like, I don't need any changes to that. I understand why the players might. The NFL, I'm fine with right now. The other two, I honestly believe they'd be better served by having shorter seasons. But I also understand that you got to figure out how to make them the same amount or more money while doing it.
And I listen, I know what I say about the NBA is that means each team is giving up 6 home games. They're giving up 12 games, 6 home, 6 road. That's 6 home dates. But at some point, fans are going to get wise, and maybe they already have. I don't pay close enough attention to it, of buying tickets for a February 15th Lakers game. I live in Minneapolis, and I want my kid to see LeBron, and then LeBron load management doesn't play. And maybe fans are going to get more wise to all of that and go, well, there's going to be tickets available because nobody knows when these guys are coming, if they're going to play. I'm giving you more of a chance with the formula I'm giving out to have not a complete guarantee, but the more likelihood that the star you're buying tickets for is going to show up and play in that game.
That's right.
And listen, Rick, I know it's a problem that I don't know it has a solution, because listen, if you're a team that's good enough to win games while, doing load management, you're doing right by the player. I mean, you really are. I know, Pop's the one that started this, and everybody was like, what are you doing? He was doing right by players on it when he knew he had good enough teams did he need to push for 60 wins? No, he just needed to push for a good enough seed and have his guys healthy at the end of the year, and it worked.
Yeah, he's also playing like 3 guys who were around 40 years old as his 3 stars on a team at one point. That's kind of where it started.
That's a good point. But listen, that's why I go back. I understand teams with load management, and I do understand the flip side now of trying the criteria of, you got to play 65 games to be eligible for awards. And for a lot of players, maybe that doesn't mean much. There's probably incentives in contracts that at least mean some financial gain for them. But listen, when you're making what you're making as an NBA superstar, does the extra $250,000 for being first team all NBA really mean all that much to you?
No. I like the idea to figure out how to fix the load management issue in the NBA, because I do think that's an actual problem for the league, and especially with young fans and trying to take your kids to games and stuff.
But what's the answer?
I mean, what you said, I don't know if that's the perfect answer, but it's at least an interesting thought of, like, start penalizing these guys. That you get X amount for free, but you miss more than that. It's like being at work. You get so many excused absences, and then it's like, yeah, it comes out of your check, man.
No, I mean, I think at our place, and I have never taken a sick day, but I think we get 80 hours of sick leave. Unless I know people take it on a Friday or a Monday, but you're also rolling the dice that I've used 6 of my sick days to just fart around. And, oh gosh, I legitimately got the flu, and now I've only got 4 days left, and I'm going to be out for 2 weeks. I kind of would like a paycheck. Then I have to burn vacation days. And then, so again, you can use your load management days, but be careful, man, because, hey, use your 5 by the end of December, and suddenly you get a bone spur in your knee in January, and you are legitimately out. That's too damn bad.
Yeah, I think that's actually the most interesting part of this whole conversation with fixing all the schedules is the load management idea, fixing that in the NBA, because I think you might be onto something there. They could actually do something about that potentially. So, all right, that's all we got.
All right, we somehow squeezed an hour out of all that, Rick. Good stuff as always. Appreciate you guys coming up with the questions. Keep them sending them. Go to the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything on X. For Rick Brewing, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.